Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3 in this quest for 2000. Trying to reach a 2000 rating on chess.com. So let's find an opponent today. All right, so we'll play a 15-minute game with 10-second increment. Hopefully, that doesn't go too long, but it should give me plenty of time to explain the moves as I go. All right. Here we go. Okay, we have white this time. So for this series, and it looks like the game was aborted. Okay, well, let's find a new game. All right, and now we have the black pieces. Okay. So they start with e4. For this series, I've decided to stick with an e5 opening, and we'll just see what they do here. So knight to f3, probably the most common move, attacking. So I'm just going to defend. And then, all right, so they play the Scotch game. So I'm going to go ahead and capture this. All right, so now I just want to mention I'm trying to learn all these openings, so I'm a little bit, I'm still trying to improve with these openings and learn as I go. So let's see, what would be best here? Do I just play d6? And so, normally I don't play this opening. I used to play the Sicilian defense, but I wanted to try something different. So I will have to brush up on all these openings. If I capture, it just helps him develop his queen to the center of the board. I'm thinking d6, but should I bring this bishop out first and develop that? If I do that, he could move here and attack this unprotected pawn. So I'm just going to go ahead and or do I just, I don't know, maybe bring this knight up here so if he captures I can recapture. I think I'm going to try that, and I don't know if that's the best move, but that way if he captures my knight, or now I can capture his knight, and if his queen comes out, I can jump my other knight up there and attack his queen. All right. So let's see how he responds. I would imagine he'll probably... Okay, so he develops here, getting ready to... Oh, now he just gives up a piece. Okay. Huh. Well, that is interesting. All right, well... Do we just develop this other knight up here, or do we push this pawn to further develop? We just have to make sure there aren't any surprises here once he moves that. All right, we'll just retreat back, play safe. Now we could jump up here and attack his bishop. Okay, but I need to develop more pieces here. He's gaining a lead in development, so I'm going to go ahead and push that pawn. Now I can develop this bishop. Could develop my other knight here. All right. Should work on development. So I mean, I guess we could attack. We'll just attack his bishop, see what he does here. And I don't know, that might be risky because I just moved a piece twice in the opening, and generally you don't want to do that, unless you... Okay, so he just retreats back to keep the bishop pair. I guess I could go ahead. Now the problem is he could start marching these pawns. All right, well, let's go here. And if he jumps up here, or excuse me, if he attacks the knight, we can jump forward, threatening to capture his bishop. All right, so he does do that. So we might as well just attack him, see what he does. Will he just retreat his bishop back? Which, that is a possibility. Okay, so he just falls back. Now what? All right. Well, the problem is possible attack on this bishop, and then the knight will be unprotected. So I'm going to have to move. All right. Well, what do you think? What should we do here? That knight's not really doing much now, so we'll just step back. If they attack us here, then what? Do we march this bishop up, attacking again, but then this bishop could move to here. He's trying to avoid trading of pieces, which is smart. So remember, you should definitely try to avoid trades. If you can. All right. Well, we'll just go ahead and attack. Okay, so finally we can knock off another piece. So that helps us. Okay, now we want to put this knight up here in this outpost on e5. So that'll be a pretty strong knight there. Now, do we do that immediately, or should we just develop another piece? I think... oh, well, the problem could be the queen could swoop down there. All right, anyway, we should develop a piece here. Oh, and I should jump that knight up there. Jump the knight up here and attack. Okay. All right. Well, now we could go ahead and trade off another piece here. So we might as well do that. We'll just continue to trade down material. So this bishop is pinning his bishop to the king. So we should just be able to trade that off now. Then we can castle, and we should be doing all right. All right, so what might the opponent do? We have to watch out for this rook on the half open file here, lined up on our queen. Even though this pawn is in the way, this pawn is pinned. Okay, so let's continue to trade down material and use our extra piece as an advantage in the end game. So we could just move this pawn and then threaten to move our queen up here. Alright, so now we've just pinned his queen to the king, and we can trade his queen off next. All right. Okay, so his options here are just to move a rook up and protect his queen, or, well, that is interesting. That will pull his queen into the, or his king into the center of the board. All right. Well, can that help us in any way now that his... we'll just continue to trade. We'll just stick to our plan, trade down material. Okay, so now, let's see, where do we put our king? Do we push this pawn up, kind of trying to lock down this position? We need to get our rooks activated. So, where should we castle to? Well, we could try and keep this knight out of the position. So we'll go ahead and do that. Kind of blockade the knight. And so this is a preventative move here to keep this knight from jumping down and trying to fork our king and rook. And then, I don't know, I have to decide where I want to place my king. Okay, so he's trying to press forward here. I guess I could castle on the other side here. All right. Well, do I jump forward with this knight? And what is the time looking like? All right, so we have plenty of time. If I move here and threaten his king, well, might as well just bring this knight forward into a better position, threaten this pawn. Okay, so he decides to go there. I guess I could push forward here. I'll have to watch out, make sure that his knight can't jump in here. All right, we should be good. We'll just go there, kind of try and limit the scope of the pawns to slow them down here. All right. And I should now just probably move my king up to e7. You know, I could even back my knight up and try and lock down this, because when you're behind in material, you want to trade off as many pawns as you can, because the person with the extra material, extra pieces, can use that extra piece to try and pick off your pawns and promote his own. So, you know, it'd be to his advantage to just start trading off material here. All right. So, well, do I pick off the material? Probably, you know, or do I just push forward here? Could try that, try to avoid trading. So I think I'll do that. I think I'll just push forward, try to avoid trading material. If he captures, I capture. If he moves over, then I will move my king over to f7. So if he captures, I'll capture. If he puts a rook on this open file, I'll move my king over, and then I can start fighting with one of my rooks. His other option is to just press his pawn forward. You know, being behind in material, he should probably trade off and try and get some counterplay on this open file. But, okay. Interesting. All right, so what do I do now? Do I just retreat back with this knight? Probably. Or do I just push forward? He'll be able to come down into my position here. Okay. Well, I guess I will just go ahead and push forward there. And now I'm going to have to march up the other way, possibly. I don't know. The only thing about this, it's going to let his knight jump in here. Which then, I mean, I guess, okay, so he decides to do that. All right. So I'll just go here. Now I could jump down, try and move my knight, reposition it to attack his. I don't know though. Retreating my knight back might not be the greatest move. Oh, okay, now he swoops into here, which I didn't want to happen. All right, how can I fight for this. All right, all right. How can I fight? Well, if he jumps in here, I guess I can jump up there and threaten to fork his pieces there. Okay, so he stopped that. Now, have to figure out how to reposition this knight, which is not doing much, and be able to cover here. Okay, well, I have to move this rook. So, I could also possibly just give up this rook for the knight and a pawn. And I'll still be ahead 2 knights for his rook. All right, well, let's jump forward there. Okay. All right, well, now if he jumps his knight in there, I mean, I guess I could just move this rook up to e7, then swing the other rook in behind, put pressure on this backwards pawn. Well, let's see what he does here. What he does. And it would be nice to get this knight here to d7 and then jump it up to e5 into that outpost. All right, and so now they're taking a long time to think here. All right, let's see how they decide to play here. All right, so they go ahead and do that. All right, so best move probably be, I mean, we could trade more material down, so that's the decision. Do we just give up our rook for the knight and he'll recapture with the pawn, and then our king can move up here? Then he could recapture, we could recapture. All right, or we could hold off on that and just move our could just move up here. So we'll just start with that. Just move the rook up. We could try and double up here. All right, now is he going to try the same thing? Go after my knight? He may. All right, so our priority now should be to put this knight in a better spot here, because it is not doing much there. And where can that knight go? If I jump down, Let's see. All right. If he captures, I capture, then what will he do? All right, well, let's do that. Double up here. We could knock out this knight. Then we could even pick off this pawn over here. All right, well, as we wait for him to move, let's think what else we could do here. A big problem is this knight. I mean, what do we do with this? If we move here, where can he go? There's just not many options. This is a problemed knight. So, I mean, I'm thinking if we just knock out this knight, he captures, we capture. Or would it be better to capture with the king? Maybe oh, we also have to watch out for this unprotected pawn now, so that could be an issue. All right. I don't know, it's still tricky here. I guess we'll wait and see if he gives up his rook for this knight. If he does that, then I guess we could go ahead and capture his knight. But if he captures our knight, we recapture, his king captures, then he'll have this passed pawn here. So that could be an issue. All right. What other options do we have? And once again, this knight is a problem. And we probably need to move this knight back. That way we can push this B pawn up to protect the A pawn. But then what do we do with the knight? I mean, then I guess we could move it back, swing it over to here, and then move it up to here, and then jump into this outpost. So I think that'll be the plan. Oh, but that's a lot of moves. So, what will he do in the meantime? So knight to C8, knight to A7, knight to C6, and then to E5, and that'll be a good spot for that knight. All right, so that looks like what we'll have to try and do is knight to C8 to A7 to C6 to E5. All right, knight to C8 will probably be our next move, depending on what he does though. All right. Well, at least he is taking a long time to try and figure this out, which also gives me time to come up with a plan. Because I have to say, I've always had a little bit of a time trouble. The longer the game is, the better I'll play. Maybe that's true for everybody. Although some people don't like longer games, they kind of fall asleep in longer games and could even play worse. But I don't know. I've noticed with my playing anyway, the longer time I have, the better I usually play. And then I just seem to make more oversights and mistakes. Okay, so he does capture, so I'm forced to capture. All right, so now, I should probably do the same with him. And then I'll just have my extra knight. All right, that'll keep material even, so we'll just trade down. Okay, well here I can just drive the king out of there. Okay. Well, he captures, I capture. I mean, I could just stay there. All right. Well, I should just capture here. So if I just, I don't know. All right, so I'm undecided whether I should capture this pawn here. That'll get rid of his, I don't know here. This is tricky. Do I ignore him? He captures. Okay, I'm going to capture that way. And we'll just see what he does. Okay, so he decides to do that. All right, we have to reposition this knight. So we'll just go there and threaten to attack his king. We'll drive his king back. So that looks like a good move. Just drive the king back. And if he makes a mistake by trying to attack my pawn, we could fork his king and his rook. But, I'm sure he'll be smart enough not to do that. But now we can move our knight into a better position up here to e7, checking the king. And then we could possibly jump. Well, let's see. Then we could just jump our, move our pawn up and block out his king even more. So knight up to e7 with check. Okay, so he decides to do that. So let's drive his king out of there. And now we can just press forward. The pawn is protected. The knight is protected by the rook. And now, let's see, what would be the best move to play here? Well, we'll just play that and wait and see what he does. And we could probably just run him out of moves. because this king can't make progress onto our side of the board. And in the meantime, our king could just move up here and start causing problems. Okay, so he's thinking about moving here and trying to get into our position. So we might as well just attack him. All right. Well, now we might as well just trade off more material. And then our king can just swoop up here, attack his pawn. He'll probably want to go here and guard it. But now our knight is going to win the game because the knight will just be too difficult to stop. Now we do have to watch out for him pushing forward here, but if he captures us, we can just recapture. We don't want to capture him, and then he would have this these two pawns on the edge. So let's say he pushes his B pawn. We don't want to capture because then he'll recapture and then push his A pawn, and try and get a passed pawn over here. Which our knight would be able to stop that anyway, I think. So we might as well just let him press forward. And we'll just attack and capture this pawn here. And then we'll have this passed pawn that we can escort up the board. So, we should be winning pretty good now. All right, now what would be best here? To just capture? Or retreat back? Okay, so we can take our time here, figure out what we want to do. Should we go ahead and move the knight with check? So check. The king will have to move. We can pick off this pawn. So that's one option. We move up here, we check the king, we pick off this pawn on c3. But if he captures here, I don't know if I like that. We do have this passed pawn. So do we just capture his pawn? His king would recapture. Our king could move over. Then we could start marching this pawn up. So I think we'll go with that plan. We'll just do that. And then we'll just have this extra passed pawn over here to march up the board. All right, so he'll capture, but now we can just start marching that pawn up the board. And he'll have to go up here and stop that pawn. And that'll give us time to just move over here and attack his pawns. And then promote one of our pawns on the queen side here. All right, well, feel free if you haven't, if you stuck around for this long of the video, I thank you. I'll do a game review after this, and we can see what mistakes were made. All right, so we just move up there, just start marching that pawn up. Okay, now we can just move our king over. All right, so he captures, forcing us to capture. Okay, now we'll just play this, force him to back up his king, and our king can make progress. He'll probably resign. I mean, he may try to run me out of time, but I have plenty of time to, either promote this pawn, or run my king over here, pick one of his pawns off, and then promote one of these pawns. But he is trying to hang in there. All right, well, thank you all for sticking around this long. Like I said, I'll do a game review after the game is over, find out what mistakes were made, how we can improve, and then I hope you continue with me on this journey to see how long this will take, if it's possible to for me to reach 2,000. And also, like and subscribe for those that haven't yet. And so he's really running out of options now. Oh, he tried to just run me into, almost stalemated him. If I move my king here to f4, that would completely stalemate the game. All right, so I'll go over here after this. So he might give up now. That was his last chance, trying to get a stalemate out of it, which, that's crazy. I almost fell for that. All right, yeah, now we're gonna have a queen here shortly, and then the game will be pretty easy after that. All right, what would be best here? What is the best way to go after him? This pawn he's going to use for cover, so we'll just check him there. Then we'll just move this pawn out of the way. All right, what would be best? Just make sure we don't stalemate him. That is the most important thing to remember here. All right, he is really trying to work out that stalemate. So if we promote to a queen here, that might also be a stalemate. Yes, it would be. All right, so instead, let's see. What if we promote to a rook? Would that still be a stalemate? I think so. Okay. Well, this is kind of funny. So, We'll just push forward here. Get ready to promote to another queen. I mean, that's the easiest way. I could have brought my king over, tried to use my knight, but the easiest way is to just promote here. Is he still going for a stalemate? This is pretty crazy and instructional. So if I promote here once again, it would be a stalemate because that knight blocking things off. So what we'll do is check him first, and then he'll have to move. We'll just promote to another queen, and then now we can easily mate. All right, so we'll cut him off here. He'll have to move over, and then we'll just use the stepping method or leapfrog, whatever you want to call it, where you just slowly take away each file with one queen move at a time. You know, or now is he just going to not move and let the time run out? Okay, so he resigns. But yeah, that was amazing. I had to really be careful there because there were many, many opportunities where if I would have just made a quick move, it would have been a stalemate. All right, so let's do a quick game review here and see what secrets the computer unlocks. All right, let's see here. So the computer says that I played at 86.9 to his 81.9% accuracy. He did have a blunder. I had one miss and one mistake. He had 0 mistakes or misses, but he had 4 inaccuracies and I only had 2. All right, so it says sudden, great win. You saw your chance and took it. So let's see what I'll do this game review. It kind of blows through the moves really quickly, but I'll go back and I'll look at the analysis after I do this game review. All right, so we're in the Scotch game, and it's still book. It says that knight takes d4 is the last book move. So yeah, once I went here, this is a mistake. Okay, the only reason I did that, I wanted to back up this knight, but it looks like knight to f6, just a normal developing move here would have been better. All right, so, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm starting with a whole new set of openings, so I'm still learning these openings, and hopefully I'll improve as I play more of these games, and I'll in the future I'll be able to play the correct opening moves, and we'll be able to learn more along the way. So I should have made just the normal knight to f6 move, and then here he just made this mistake. So was that a blunder? Yeah, so that was his blunder move, just moving the bishop here and forgetting that now the queen is no longer protecting this knight. So, of course we capture, and now it's pretty much winning. Black is black is 3.2 in the lead. So here, after I get ahead in material, I just try to trade down. And so it really blasts through these moves. So I'll go back and I'll do an analysis, and we can look at all these moves more carefully, because I'm surprised it's just going through these moves so quickly here. All right, and then that was the end of the game. So it looks like he played at a 1500 level, and then I played at 1850. So I'm gonna have to step it up a little more if I want to try and reach 2,000. But opening accuracy, he had 75.4 versus 83.8 is what I had, and then in the middle game, 76.1, and I played 84% accuracy. All right, so I'll go back to the beginning of the game, and we'll go over this in more detail with the analysis. So E4, strong opening move, especially if you like tactics, because the position normally opens up in the center. And then, I just respond with E5, a good solid response. I used to play the Sicilian, but the games would get wild and crazy, and that would give me more difficulty, especially when I played stronger players. So I'm trying to play something a little more solid with E5 and maybe avoid some of the craziness. So knight to F3, a good response here, attacking my E5 pawn, so I just protect it. And now D4, the Scotch game. So I recently saw a video where Hikaru Nakamura recommended the Scotch game, especially for beginners. And this is a solid opening especially when you're starting out, because you quickly put your two pawns out in the center. You're already attacking black's pawn, and now you have plenty of room to develop your bishops. So this is, and you're threatening to push forward here and gain more space and drive away the knight, which is protecting the pawn. So the best move is to just go ahead and capture that pawn according to the computer. So that's what I do. And now there are different moves here that can be played. Bishop to C4, I believe, is the Scotch Gambit. So that's one option. And of course, the computer says to keep the game even, it's best to capture with the knight here. And now it says that I should just play knight to F6, attacking their knight, or excuse me, attacking their pawn. But I was worried that their knight would capture my knight, and then he would be able to just move forward possibly and attack my knight. So I'm going to have to dig into the opening deeper and figure out how I want to play against this Scotch game. So I played this move, which is, the computer says, is a mistake, and already white is +1 to the advantage because of this move. And the only reason I did this, I thought, well, now I could capture his knight, and then if his queen recaptures, well, then I could just jump my knight up here to C6 and attack the queen and drive it away. So at least I had some kind of logical explanation behind this move, but the computer did not like it one bit. So let's see here. Now the blunder was played. So it looks like knight to C3 should have been played, just developing the other knight. So if we go back, the computer, yes, says knight to C3 is the most recommended move, or bishop to C4, or bishop to E2. So anyway, the blunder was made, so I snap off this knight that was unprotected here, and then now knight to C3 is played, the best move. So just developing, and now I'm left with this knight here, just blocking up everything. So that's why this was such a mistake. So now I just retreat back, because, and it says that that was a good move, but best would have been to immediately push forward with my pawn here. So that's interesting. That would allow me to develop this other bishop, give me some room in this cramped position now. But I retreated back because I didn't want to have to worry about this bishop moving, possibly with a check in the future, and then my knight being here unprotected. But the computer says the best move was to just push my pawn forward. But instead, I retreat and my opponent moves here bishop to e3. So just developing his other bishop. So now I push up one square forward. And once again, it says I should have just pushed all the way forward here. But because my king is still stuck in the middle and he's about to castle, I kind of thought, well, maybe I shouldn't be opening up the center too much until my king is safe. So h3 is played, which, I guess that was played to keep my bishop from attacking up here in the future, but this was kind of a wasted move, I think. Queen to d2 was recommended as best by the computer, just developing the queen, giving white the option to castle kingside or queenside, and he creates a battery with his queen and bishop working together. So I respond by just jumping my knight up here, attacking his bishop. I thought, well, I'll try and trade off material because I'm ahead. So the more material I trade off, I'll just have that extra knight in the end, which is how I ended up winning with that extra knight, helping my pawns promote. So let's see. He retreats, and it says that is the best move, keeping his bishop pair, because that is usually a good advantage to keep your bishop pair and see if you can get rid of your opponent's bishop pair. So I developed my other bishop, trying once again to be able to jump up here with either the bishop or the knight and harass his bishops. So he attacks, and I jump forward with the knight, and it says that that is not the best move, that instead moving back to c6 would be better and keeping this knight. So by doing that, I'm still ahead, of course, but it kind of makes the game a little bit closer. So now he retreats back, and it says that's an inaccuracy, that it would have been better just to move back here, which is what I thought he would do. Although I see why he moved here, moved his bishop up here. He didn't want to lose this pawn on b2. But if I would have captured that, his rook could swing over here attacking my knight. My knight would have to retreat, and then he could just capture my b pawn. So that probably wouldn't be a good move to jump up here and capture that. All right, so I retreat back. He attacks, and so now I once again try and trade off another piece. So he just attacks my knight, so I go ahead and capture. His queen captures, and then I just develop my knight, which was blocking up everything down here. And it says this is the best move, just pushing this knight forward. Then I'll be able to jump into e5 onto this outpost. So whenever, well, I shouldn't say whenever, but most of the time when you can jump a knight into an outpost square where it's protected by a pawn of yours and there are no pawns that can chase it out of there. So this is a really good spot to put a piece, but especially a knight in here. And from there, the knight has a little more scope and it's protected pretty well. All right, so a3 here. Why is this played? Perhaps to keep my knight from jumping forward, I assume. So I just developed my bishop. It says that's the best move. Now I'm ready to castle. He castles on the queen side. So here I try and trade off more material. And it says this is the best move. So he ignores that. I capture. And his queen recaptures. So now I play h6 so I can trade off queens and just slowly get rid of his material, his pieces, and use my extra knight for an advantage in the endgame. So it says I should have just played queen to e7 here, and that would have been a better move. because then I could go ahead and castle on the queen side as well. Because if there's opposite side castling, if I would go ahead and castle on the king side, he could try and just throw all his pawns forward and attack my king side. And if his king was over there, it's less safe for him to do that. But when you're on opposite sides, castled on opposite sides, a lot of times you can use a pawn storm to just press forward with your pawns and have your pieces flow in behind them, and it can generate a good attack on your opponent. All right, so g4, here comes the pawn storm. Maybe he's thinking that I'm going to go ahead and castle over here. So I don't do that. I trade off queens, and I thought he would capture and I would recapture and he would double my pawns. But then I thought, well, if that happens, I can just push this one forward, protect this pawn, slow down his pawns over here, and I would have a rook on an open file, and maybe I could use that to some advantage. So the king moves up, and I wasn't expecting that move. So I thought, well, I'll continue with my plan of trading material. And it says that's an excellent move, but a little better would have been to castle queenside. So I go ahead, capture, he recaptures, and now a6. And this was just to keep his knight out of my position. So he pushes forward with h4, which the computer says is the best move. And here I thought about immediately pushing my pawn to f6 here, and then that would slow down his pawns. So in the game, first I decided to just go ahead and jump my knight into this good outpost, and I'm threatening to possibly capture here with check, but his king just moves forward, which is good to do in the end game. As long as your king is safe, it can be good to push your king into the action and help fight, because it can become a strong defensive or offensive piece in the end game, as long as you don't put your king in danger by being too risky. So f6 to slow things down. He pushes forward, and he should be trying to trade off as many pawns as he can, since he's behind in material. So I, on the other hand, want to avoid trading pawns. So I push forward here to make the space equal on the H file here. So these two pawns are pretty even. And now he has a decision to either push forward to capture or just ignore these pawns attacking each other. So he instead pushes over here. The computer says that knight to e2 would have been better, repositioning his knight, possibly making room for the c pawn to push forward. But this is an excellent move as well, pushing his pawn forward, threatening to attack my knight and gain space. So I had to make a decision here. I thought about, not pushing my pawn forward, and then just moving my knight when he attacked, and maybe that would have been better. Let's see what the computer says. No, it recommends pushing forward here and keeping the space even on the queen side. Now, the downside to this is that it could let his knight jump forward and attack, threatening a fork here, but I guess I could just protect that by moving over. So he does, in fact, move his knight forward, the best move, threatening a fork. So I move here to protect it, but it says that first I should have captured with my pawn, checking the king here. So I don't know, that's interesting that it recommends that. So if I would have done that, then it recommended that I castle queenside, which, maybe that would have been better because it would have activated this rook here. All right, so he repositions the knight. This is a good move, but best is c4, pushing his pawns forward, where he could just keep pushing forward, and I would not have been able to capture because my pawn is pinned to my king here. So I reposition my knight, blocking this g file in case there is an exchange of pawns here and rooks would try and take advantage of that g file. So also I was threatening a fork of his rooks. So he moves his rook up to cover the f2 square and also prevent that fork of the rooks by the knight. So now rook at a to e8. So activating this rook that was doing nothing over here in the corner other than guarding this pawn maybe. And I jump over here where I'm attacking this half open file. And that is usually a good strategy for the rooks, is to place them where your pawns have been pushed forward or your pawns have been exchanged where there's a half open file like this or even an open file. So the knight jumps in here and it says this is an inaccuracy. Once again, it prefers c4, which, you know, that c4 move could be pretty strong and cause some problems. And I didn't really think much about that in the game, him pushing that c-pawn. All right, so rook to e7, protecting this unprotected pawn. And it says that better would have been right away to capture that knight. So it looks like I should have captured the knight, and then we'll take a look at that. So the computer recommends capturing the knight. Then, you know, of course, he would have to recapture. And then the king would capture. And then let's see what the computer says would have played out after this. And it's taken a while to think here, so I don't know if that's good or bad. All right, so let's see. Well, if you've stuck around this long, thank you. And as always, feel free to leave comments or suggestions, you know, on anything that you feel like. You know, if you would like to see videos in the future on particular subjects, you know, feel free to leave a comment. All right, so that would have been the best thing to do according to the computer. And now it looks like rook to e2 is recommended, which just lines up on my king and, you know, maybe guards this pawn a little bit. So anyway, in the game, let's go back and see what actually happened here. Okay, so the knight moved forward. I just protect the pawn, and now he moves rook to g1, although the computer recommends knight to c5. So that would have been an interesting move. That's only possible because this pawn is pinned to the king by this rook. So knight to c5, he could jump here attacking this, and I would have to retreat back and guard that pawn, I guess. So anyway, in the game, I double up rooks. He captures, and it says that's an excellent move, but better would have been to trade off pawns here. So capture, king captures, I go ahead and capture, and that's the best move. And then my rook captures, but it says that capturing with the king immediately would have been better. So, you know, that's pretty interesting. I guess that would have kept the his king out of my position. So now his king's able to jump in there. But it says that better would have been to capture pawns here. So I capture now, which is best. He recaptures. And it looks like it would have been better to just push his pawn forward on the h-file. So, you know, that's interesting. And the game continues with knight to c8. And it's funny, the computer said that this knight to c8 move is the best move in the game. And, you know, how often is moving a knight not only to the rim, where knights are usually dim, to the edge of the board like this, but on the back rank as well. So that just shows you that general rules are very helpful, but there are always exceptions to all the general rules in chess. There are times when, like this, moving the king to the edge of the board is okay because we're about to reposition this knight up here to e7 and check the king. So the rook moves, excuse me, and it looks like immediately retreating the king would have been better. So now we're able to check the king. Now he retreats, and then we just push our pawn forward. But it looks like it would have been better to keep attacking the king. Huh, interesting. Move the knight up there instead, where I guess if we did that, then the knight would be able to jump up to this outpost. But, it could end up making it there eventually anyway. But, okay, since we push that pawn, the rook is able to get here on white's 7th rank, and that is usually a good rule to follow with your rooks. If you can take control of an open file and then jump up to the 7th rank where usually the pawns are lined up. But here I'm ahead this extra knight, and that makes all the difference here. Now the knight and rook are playing defense. So I move this pawn up just to wait and see what he does, and also protect this pawn here on a5. And it says that was an excellent move, but an immediate rook to e5 would have been better. So now his rook moves over here to f7, and it looks like he was just trying to exchange off and get his rook or his pawn further up the board. So, and the computer says it would have been better to just retreat his king back even further. So I move up here, attacking his rook. But the computer prefers... that's interesting. It says d5 would have been the best move. So let's take a quick look at that. If d5 is the best move... All right, so... Well, that's strange. So now, after rook to f7, it said d5 was best. Although now it is not saying that. It's saying rook to e5. So once again, if we play this, it still is saying d5 was best. So we'll take a quick look at d5. So if that is played... What if he just captures here? So if we have a capture, e takes d5, now what? Well, now I guess it lets you run your rook up to e2 and counterattack over here. So the rook could... And I don't know if I like that, because now... this pawn, well, I guess the pawn's protected by the knight, so you should be good. And, what does he do here? You're going to end up picking off his queenside pawns because his king's blocked off and his rook is way over here. So, yeah, it looks like you would end up just picking off some pieces with your rook. So another general principle in the endgame, when you have an option to make your rook more active, it is almost always good to do that. Instead of playing defense with your rook, you want to activate it and go on the offensive with your rooks. So, going back, we'll see what actually happened in the game. So, I just attack his rook. He moves up here, attacking mine. So I thought, well, I'll just go ahead, trade off material, And he probably thought, well, now he's pushing his pawn forward, but I can just retreat my knight and from here jump into this blockade, or excuse me, well, blockade of this e pawn, but this outpost. I'll guard this pawn, and now my king can just jump up here. So he just moves the pawn. It looks like moving his king over here would have been best. So I jump up, attacking his pawn. Now he protects it, but I don't know. The computer says that it's pretty much losing for white at this point. It probably has been for a while. So we'll just play out the rest of the game. So attacking, moving this knight up here where I can reposition down to d7 and pick off this pawn. So over here, I have to make sure, I don't want to capture here. Then if he recaptures, he could push forward and have a passed pawn. My knight would be able to move over here and stop it. But, why give him any counterplay over there? So I just ignore that, attack his pawn. He has to make a move. He retreats his king. So I just pick off this pawn. So now he pushes forward. And here, let's go back and see if that was the best move. So here, capturing, it says this is excellent, but it would have been better to just keep my knight up here on this outpost square. So now he pushes forward, and it says this is an excellent move, but better would have been just to push a pawn forward here. All right, so capture, the king recaptures, but now I have this passed pawn. And if we look at this, my pawn and my knight are really doing a good job, along with my king, of blocking out my opponent's king. So that's a good strategy you can use in the endgame, is try to place your pieces, pawns, your king, where it blocks your enemy's king from being able to infiltrate into your position. So now I just push my pawn forward, and so he has to watch out for this pawn now. And if we go back, it looks like those weren't even the best moves according to the computer. So after this move, it says that's an excellent move, but I should have just moved my king over towards the queen side here. And then now it's recommending that he capture this pawn, which he did eventually. And once again, that's strange. It's saying that I should capture over here, but I didn't want to give him that passed pawn. So he has to keep an eye. He's stuck on watching this pawn, preventing it from promoting. So it just lets me move my king forward, gain more space. Finally, he captures the pawn and I recapture. And then pushing this forward is not a good move because it just brings this pawn closer to my side of the board where I can attack it more easily. Although it does prevent my king and knight from moving in that direction. Although, I could just as easily go to d6 with the king and then jump up here to c5 with the king and attack this. And I could also just abandon this knight, because if he comes down to try and pick off the knight, well, then my pawn would just march forward and it would be unable to be stopped if the white king captured my knight that's protecting it. All right, so I just push forward to stop any progress by my opponent. Now he has to retreat back. So I just moved my king up the board. And it says that this was an excellent move, but moving closer to the pawn would have been better. So now I almost stalemated the game here because I was about to move my pawn up here to f4, and that would have been an immediate stalemate because of the knight cutting off the square here on h5. The king would have cut off g3 and g5. So I don't know. That was a close one. That would have been a horrible way to end a game that you're winning by just making a careless stalemate. All right, so I move over here, going after his pawns. And anyway, I'll just play through the rest of the moves here because now the game's pretty much over. These pawns will just march forward. And the biggest thing here to watch out for is not to stalemate the opponent, which there were plenty of opportunities to stalemate here. Now, here I have to watch out for stalemating once again, because if I push my pawn forward, that would be a stalemate. So, I don't know, pretty funny that there were all these stalemate opportunities. And it says this is a miss, that I should have promoted to a knight. But, you know, I just wanted to make sure that there weren't any stalemates. So I just check. Then he has to move. Then I can go ahead and promote. And if he captures, now I just block him off. And I can use the stepping method. And the computer said, so the game ended here, but it says it could have continued with, you know, these moves here where you just start harassing the king and closing in on him with both of your queens. All right, you get the picture. Well, if you stuck around for this entire video, thank you. And feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, leave comments or suggestions and video requests for any chess topics you'd like to see in the future. Thank you, everyone, for following me on this journey, this quest to reach a 2,000 rating on chess.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great chess day.